The airport siren blared, cutting through the foggy morning. In that instant, no one on the ground or in the sky knew that a single flight was about to redefine the meaning of human dignity. Flight SA-7110 of Stellar Air was taking off from New York to London, seemingly just another transatlantic journey. But for Paige Mallory, the famously cold and commanding chief flight attendant, today was simply another shift. To her, people fell neatly into two categories, those worth serving and those worth ignoring. Paige prided herself on being able to read a person within seconds. A tailored suit, a gleaming watch, a diplomatic passport, or the opposite, a worn coat, a scuffed suitcase. That was all she needed to decide how wide to smile, how low to bow, and how sincerely to say, "Thank you." And this morning, on her passenger list, seat 12B was occupied by a middle-aged black woman flying alone, Economy Plus. Nothing special. Perfect. Because that was exactly what she wanted, Dr. Maya Ellington, 50th&6, rolled her small silver suitcase up the jet bridge. Grey turtleneck, faded indigo scarf, simple flat shoes. No diamonds, no assistants. Only calm, steady eyes, the kind that had seen an airline collapse and rise again from ashes. 3 years earlier, Maya had sold her entire stake in a major tech firm and used both the fortune and her late husband's legacy to save a dying airline. She renamed it Stellar Air and changed its slogan to Dignity in the Skies. She didn't just want to run an airline. She wanted to return a sense of humanity to every passenger, something the world seemed to have forgotten the moment an aircraft door closed. But in recent months, reports had begun piling up on her desk. Passenger complaints, anonymous emails from junior crew, cold, blunt reviews, rude staff, discriminatory behavior, no respect for customers. An advisor once suggested sending a covert inspection team. But Maya had said, "If I want the truth, I'll hear it with my own ears." And today, the owner of Stellar Air sat quietly in seat 12B, and no one knew it. The aircraft rolled through a thin veil of rain, the red light reflecting off its silver body. Inside, passengers crowded the aisles, lifting bags and searching for seats. Paige leaned against the galley wall, arms folded, her dark red lipstick tightening into a frown. "Sir, that won't fit. You'll have to check it." "Ma'am, move along. You're holding everyone up." Her voice sliced through the air like a blade. No apology, no warmth. Only sighs and raised eyebrows filled the cabin. Maya approached, pausing by the narrow galley. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice warm and courteous. Paige glanced at her, eyes sweeping from head to toe, then said nothing. Instead, she turned to the young attendant beside her, Tessan Gwen, who looked nervous and uncertain, and remarked loud enough to be heard, "Make sure you double. Check the meal pre-orders in economy. Sometimes their cards get declined." A crooked smirk tugged at Paige's lips. Tessa lowered her gaze, silent. Maya heard every word, a small, cold cut, and a familiar one. The kind of wound she thought she was too old to still feel. She walked on, quietly finding her seat. 12B, by the window. The grey fabric seat was frayed at the edges, the "in" flight magazine crumpled. She adjusted her scarf and made a mental note. Cabin materials worn out. Replacement due next quarter. A warm male voice spoke beside her. Beautiful morning for flying, isn't it? She turned. Harold Whitman, 70. 2. A retired history professor with kind eyes and impeccable manners. Maya smiled. Indeed it is, Mr. Whitman. Harold Whitman. London's calling. Well, my grandkids, actually. They chatted for a while, his simple warmth easing the chill of the cabin. Up front, Paige continued barking orders like a general, the click of her heels echoing down the aisle. No one knew that within hours those same heels would carry her to the edge of her career and her downfall. Meanwhile, Maya Ellington, the unassuming woman in seat 12B, closed her eyes. The engine's hum filled the silence, like a vow whispered to the clouds. If dignity is ever lost in the skies, I will be the one to find it. The cabin door closed with a sharp clack, like the sound of fate sealing itself onto an entire flight. The intercom crackled to life, the voice of Purser Owen Briggs, steady, practiced, and hollow, like a line memorized too many times. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Stellara Air Flight SA-710 to London Heathrow. While his greeting echoed through the cabin. Midsection, Paige Mallory leaned against the galley wall, her eyes sweeping across the passengers like a scanner. She could read a person's worth instantly. A Rimowa suitcase? A business-class traveler bumped down to economy plus. That was someone worth serving. But the ones in worn sweaters, dull shoes, or tired faces? Invisible. A young mother struggled with a child seat. The baby wailed, her husband fumbled with the straps. Paige sighed, pressing her red-tipped nails hard against the metal counter before muttering a line as sweet as poison. Some people really shouldn't fly with kids if they can't handle them. Standing beside her, Tessa Nguyen, a flight attendant barely 6 months into the job, forced a nervous smile. She said nothing. In this environment, challenging Paige was career suicide. But Maya Ellington, seated a few rows away, heard every word. That cold, detached tone brought back memories of boardroom meetings where people were ranked by their income. And now, in her very own airline, that same contempt was in the air, not on the ground, but 30,000 feet above it. As the last passenger took their seat, Paige raised her voice. Buckle up quickly, folks. We're already 5 minutes behind schedule. No smile, no please. She strode down the aisle, inspecting rows with laser precision. When she reached row 12, her gaze paused. A middle-aged black woman, purple scarf, simple grey sweater, probably an office worker, she thought. Nothing remarkable. Maya gave a polite nod. Good morning. Paige didn't respond, only glanced at her, then turned to Tessa and said, Be sure to double-check economy pre-orders. Sometimes their cards bounce. She walked away, leaving behind a heavy silence. Harold Whitman, seated beside Maya, frowned. That was uncalled for, he muttered. Maya smiled gently, calm but firm. Sometimes silence says more than words. As the aircraft began to taxi, the engines roared softly, lights flashing outside the window. The cabin tilted slightly. Paige and Tessa moved to the aisle, performing the safety demonstration, the life vest lifted, the gestures mechanical, the eyes like glass. No one was watching, because even the ones demonstrating didn't believe in what they were saying. Meanwhile, Owen Briggs strolled down the aisle, his attention reserved only for those in suits. "Miss Jacobs, always a pleasure to have you on board," he said smoothly, flattering a business-class passenger downgraded to seat 11C. For Maya and Harold, he gave nothing more than a passing glance, as though they were shadows. Maya pulled out her small notebook and wrote swiftly, "Clear discrimination, unequal interaction, complete disconnect from company philosophy." As the plane lifted off, the cabin vibrated gently. Harold chuckled softly. "I always love that moment, when the earth lets go." Maya replied, her voice low, "Yes, that's when you see who truly knows how to rise." A ding echoed overhead. The seatbelt sign turned off. Cabin service began. Instantly, Paige slipped back into her commanding persona, signaling Tessa to push the drink cart. "Move faster," she whispered. "Passengers don't like to wait." But the truth was, what Paige couldn't stand was being seen as weak. She always had to be in control. Meanwhile, Maya gazed out the window. Clouds drifted below like a sea of white cotton. She took a slow breath, listening to the engine's hum, the heartbeat of the creation she had built with faith and memory. Then her expression darkened slightly. From that view, Stellara Air was flying its route perfectly, but its spirit was in free fall. Paige strode down the aisle again, eyes cold, unblinking. As she passed row 12, she paused. A strange chill ran down her spine, as if the woman in 12B was observing her, not the other way around. She flipped her hair, scoffing quietly. "Just another passenger," she told herself. But if Paige Mallory had known that the ordinary woman in that seat actually owned the airline she worked for, she might not have walked past row 12 with that same look of contempt. Because only a few hours from now, those very eyes would witness the hell she had created, stretching from the economy cabin all the way to her own termination notice. The clatter of the service cart echoed down the aisle, the familiar sound of every flight, but this time it rang like the tightening of a chain. Tessa Nguyen struggled to keep calm as she pushed the heavy cart between rows of seats, repeating the same rehearsed lines over and over. "Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea, or juice?" Beside her, Paige Mallory followed closely, her eyes scanning the cabin like a guard patrolling her territory. Every time Tessa paused for more than a few seconds, Paige lowered her voice, hissing like a threat. "Keep it moving, rookie. We're not running a spa." From row 12, Maya Ellington watched quietly, her gaze connecting the invisible dots of truth. She saw the way Paige leaned in to chat with a man in a tailored suit in row 11, her voice suddenly turning honey, sweet. "Another glass of red, sir? Compliments from the crew." But only a few steps later, when facing ordinary passengers, that sweetness vanished, replaced by fatigue, irritation, and a chill sharp enough to cut. Owen, the purser, didn't seem to care. He lingered in the galley near business class, laughing over the interphone with the CO, pilot, leaving the economy cabin to fend for itself. The cart crept closer to row 12. Tessa tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, voice trembling slightly. "Something to drink, ma'am?" Maya smiled gently. "Just water, no ice, please." Harold Whitman, seated beside her, added, I'll take a ginger ale, thank you. As Tessa poured the drinks, Paige appeared, her red, painted hand slamming onto the cart's handle. Tessa, they need you in premium to help with the wine service. I'll handle this section. Her tone was sugary, but her eyes were cold as frost. Why, yes, Miss Mallory. Tessa scurried away, not daring to look back. Paige turned toward row 12. She filled Harold's cup perfectly, precise, professional. Then she reached for Maya's cup, scooping ice to the brim and pouring only a small splash of water. Maya looked down, her voice calm. I'm sorry. I asked for no ice. Paige froze, the plastic cup glinting in her hand. She sighed, long and theatrical. We're serving 200 people, ma'am. You'll get what you're given. The cup landed hard on the tray in front of Maya, the sound of plastic striking metal sharp and final. A splash of water jumped, darkening the edge of her grey sweater. In that instant, Harold Whitman turned, his face tightening with anger. "Excuse me," he said, his tone low but firm. "The lady made a simple request. There's no need for that tone." Paige narrowed her eyes, tilting her head, her words cutting through clenched teeth. "Sir, I'm the senior attendant on this flight. I think I know how to pour a drink. I'd advise you to stay out of it." Then she turned back to Maya, her smile twisting into a smirk. "Anything else I can get you? A coloring book, perhaps? Something to keep you entertained?" The words fell into dead silence. A man across the aisle snickered. Someone behind whispered, "Oh my God." Maya didn't respond. She simply met Paige's eyes, a steady, dangerous calm, like the surface of a lake hiding a storm beneath. Then she spoke softly, each word deliberate. "No, that will be all. Thank you." Paige let out a faint, mocking laugh, victorious, and pushed the cart onward, her heels striking the floor in sharp, steady beats. Maya picked up a napkin, dabbing at the water on her sweater, each motion delicate, as though she were wiping away someone else's arrogance with her composure. Harold leaned toward her, his voice filled with empathy. "That was completely out of line. You should report her." Maya smiled faintly, her tone smooth as a blade. "Don't worry, Mr. Whitman. I'm taking notes." Outside, clouds drifted past the wings, white as a burial shroud. Inside Maya, silence became the rhythm of restrained fury. Every gesture, every glance, every cutting remark was being recorded, not only in the small notebook on her lap, but in the memory of the woman who owned the entire airline. Meanwhile, Paige continued down the aisle, smiling and chatting, feeling pleased with herself. She didn't realize that the cup of ice water she'd just served had frozen her fate in place forever. The smell of food began to drift through the cabin, a mix of curry, pasta, and burnt coffee. For most passengers, it was just the familiar scent of an in-flight meal. But for Maya Ellington, each trace of aroma rose like a warning signal. The service was deteriorating, and with it, the spirit of respect was evaporating. She looked around. Owen Briggs, the purser, moved between cabins like a confident commander, but his gaze stopped only at the front rows, where a passenger in a black suit was chatting comfortably. Owen bent slightly, his voice smooth as silk. "Still all good, Mr. Jacobs? Another wine, perhaps?" His smile existed only for those who looked important. For the rest of the cabin, they were just regular passengers. The smile disappeared as soon as he turned away, revealing a face both cold and hollow. The food cart rolled closer to row 12. Owen's voice was flat and empty. "We're out of the chicken. Only vegetarian curry left." No apology, no explanation. Maya looked up, her sharp eyes cutting through the pretense. She had just seen Paige Mallory walking past the front rows, placing a tray of chicken pasta in front of the man in the black suit. The aroma of roasted chicken still lingered faintly in the air. She knew the rule, one she had written herself. Always prepare 15% extra of the most popular dish to avoid the out-of-stock excuse, which meant Owen's words could only mean one thing: dishonesty and favoritism. "Curry will be fine," Maya said calmly. Harold beside her tilted his head, frowning. "They said they're out of chicken? Odd, isn't it?" "Not odd," Maya replied softly. "Predictable." Owen placed the tray on the cart, then with a carelessness that seemed almost deliberate, tipped it. The steaming curry spilled directly onto Maya's grey sleeve. A bright yellow stain spread quickly, releasing a pungent smell of turmeric. "Oh, for," Owen muttered, cutting himself off with a frustrated sigh. He grabbed a napkin, dabbing at it clumsily, only spreading the mess wider. "It'll wash out," he said dryly, and pushed the cart forward as if nothing had happened. The cabin fell silent. Harold's mouth dropped open. "Unbelievable," he whispered. Maya looked down at her sleeve. The curry was still warm, but what burned more was the cold indifference of the man who had spilled it. This was no longer a service mistake. This was contempt, systematized and accepted. She lifted her gaze. Up front, Paige Mallory leaned against the galley wall, her eyes angled toward Maya, a thin smile curling like a blade. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Paige tilted her chin slightly, as if to say without words, "So who's the low-class passenger now?" Inside Maya, something stirred, a feeling both painful and sharp. She was no longer just an observer. She had become the test subject of her own company's illness. If she wanted to save Stellara Air, she would have to let that illness expose itself completely raw, undeniable. She reached for her small notebook and opened to a new page. Her pen moved with precision. Senior Attendant, Paige Mallory, hostile behavior, purser, Owen Briggs, negligence, bias, false report of supply shortage, immediate systemic rot visible. Harold leaned closer, his voice low but concerned. "You're taking this very calmly, Miss Ellington. I'd be furious." Maya smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and resolve. "Anger burns fast, Mr. Whitman. I need something that lasts longer." "Like what?" "Proof." She straightened her posture, gently folding a napkin over the stain, her eyes drifting to the window. Beyond the glass, the grey sky stretched endlessly, the aircraft wings slicing through clouds like a blade. A soft light reflected off the glass of water on her tray, the same cup that Paige had slammed down hours earlier like a declaration of war. Somewhere deep within her, Maya felt a line had been crossed. This was no longer about a few rude employees. This was a quiet rebellion against the very values she had built. She closed the notebook. In her eyes burned something both cold and fierce, the same restrained fire that lived in a jet engine's core. And Paige, still smiling up in business class, had no idea that every gesture, every smirk, every tiny stain of curry on that grey sleeve was weaving together the case that would soon condemn her. The flight continued. But at 35,000 feet, a silent investigation had already begun. The sky outside the window had turned the color of ash. Stellara Air Flight, A710, sliced silently through thick clouds, leaving behind pale white contrails like cold scars across the horizon. Inside the cabin, the air felt heavy, as if both crew and passengers could sense something deeply wrong spreading quietly among them. Dr. Maya Ellington sat still in seat 12B, her hand gently brushing the dried yellow stain of curry on her sleeve. It had hardened, becoming evidence of something far deeper than mere disrespect, a system rotting from within. Without a word, she pressed the call button. The light blinked on, but no one came. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 10. The steady drone of the engines filled the silence, mingled with the occasional whisper of passengers. She remained upright, her calm gaze fixed forward, as if she were testing the patience of the very airline she had built. 27 minutes later, the sound of soft footsteps approached. Tessa Nguyen, the young flight attendant, appeared holding a small bottle of water. "I'm so sorry for the wait, ma'am," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "Here's some water." Maya accepted it with a gentle nod of thanks, but before she could say more, Tessa had turned away quickly, as if afraid her own eyes might betray her fear. Maya sighed. No anger, no blame, only sadness. They hadn't just lost empathy. They had lost the courage to do what was right. 3 rows ahead, Paige Mallory was chatting with the man in the black suit, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Can I get you another wine, sir, from premium cabin? Just this once?" she whispered with calculated charm. The man laughed heartily. "You're a lifesaver. Anything for our valued passengers," Paige replied, emphasizing the words valued passengers, like a mockery aimed at the rest of the cabin. Maya noted in her small book, favoritism, disrespect, neglect of service duties, loss of integrity, total. When she looked up again, her gaze fell on Owen Briggs, the purser, standing in the galley with 2 male attendants, laughing as they huddled over a phone watching a video. They laughed loudly, oblivious to the trays still waiting to be cleared. "Is this my Stellara Air?" she thought, her chest tightening. She remembered the early meetings when she told her team, "We don't just carry people, we carry their dignity." And now, they carried attitude, exhaustion, and hollow authority. 5 hours into the flight, as the cabin lights dimmed, most passengers were asleep. Only a few personal screens glowed faintly in the dark. A baby cried in row 18, a soft, fragile sound that seemed to echo in the stillness. A young mother, no older than 25, gently rocked her baby near the exit door, her eyes ringed with fatigue, her shoulders trembling with exhaustion. Then Paige Mallory appeared from the galley, her face darkened with irritation. "Ma'am, you need to sit down. You're disturbing other passengers." Her tone was sharp as a blade. The mother stammered, "I'm sorry. He just won't stop crying." The motion helps him sleep. Paige crossed her arms. The Isle is not a playground. Control your child, or I'll have the captain issue a formal warning. You're violating safety rules. Passengers nearby turned to look. Some frowned, others lowered their eyes, unwilling to get involved. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just unkindness. It was abuse of power, the most dangerous toxin in the skies. She picked up her phone, resting it on her lap beneath her scarf. One tap, and the recorder app blinked to life. Evidence, she thought. No words were stronger than the truth, recorded as it happened. Half an hour later, Maya saw Tessa walking by. She raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me, dear," she said softly. "That young mother needs help. Perhaps I could hold the baby for a moment, give her a little rest." Tessa froze. "Oh, I don't think Miss Mallory would like that." Maya looked at her gently but firmly. "It's not about what Miss Mallory likes. It's about what's right." At that moment, Paige returned, her voice icy. "Is there a problem here?" Maya answered with perfect composure. "No problem. I was suggesting we offer some support to that mother and child." Paige let out a dry laugh and shook her head. "Oh, so you think you're part of the crew now? Let me make this clear. You're a passenger. If you get up again, I'll have you restrained. Do you understand me?" The entire cabin froze. No one dared breathe. Tessa kept her head down. Owen, from a distance, pretended not to see. Maya looked directly at Paige, her eyes unwavering. "I understand you perfectly," she said, her voice low, calm, and unshakably steady. Beneath her scarf, the phone kept recording, its small light blinking like the open eye of justice high above the clouds. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. Not to rest, but to organize her plan. She had everything now: evidence, witnesses, and truth. When the plane landed in London, it would not be just another complaint. It would be a reckoning at 35,000 feet, and Paige Mallory, along with her entire crew, would face the consequences not through shouting, but through the quiet, undeniable power of the woman in seat 12B. A soft bong echoed through the cabin, signaling the plane's descent. Morning light over London seeped through the windows, washing the cabin in a pale gold glow. Suddenly, the entire crew seemed to transform. Smiles appeared, voices softened, gestures turned graceful. It was a performance rehearsed 1,000 times. Paige Mallory adjusted her hair, picked up a silver basket of wrapped candies, and walked down the aisle with a honeyed voice. "Thank you for flying Stellara Air." The same passengers she had snapped at earlier were now granted a smile, a false gesture of grace. When she reached row 12, Paige paused. Her eyes swept from Harold Whitman to Maya Ellington, and with deliberate indifference, she skipped Maya and offered the basket to the passenger behind her. A small gesture, yet it carried the full weight of her contempt throughout the flight. Harold stiffened. He saw it, understood it, and his voice trembled with restrained anger. "That's it. The moment we land, I'm demanding to speak to the captain. This is unacceptable." Maya placed her hand gently on his arm, her voice low but steady. "Your integrity does you credit, Mr. Whitman. But please, allow me to handle this." Her eyes gleamed like forged steel. Harold met that look and nodded. The landing gear struck the runway with a thunderous thud, shaking the cabin. Seatbelt clicks echoed in unison as passengers exhaled with relief. Everyone rushed to grab their bags, make calls, and power on devices. Everyone except one. Maya Ellington remained seated, her hand resting lightly on her handbag, her gaze fixed forward. In her mind, every detail of the flight aligned: the attitudes, the abuse of power, the favoritism, the silence. Every piece fit perfectly. At the exit door, Paige and Owen stood side by side, faces adorned with painted smiles. "Goodbye. Thank you for flying with us." As passengers filed out, Paige met Maya's eyes. She smirked and winked, a small, triumphant signal that said it all. "I win. You're nobody." Maya didn't respond. She let Harold and a few others step off first, then reached up and pressed the call button. A soft ding rang out, but in the tense silence, it sounded like the opening bell of a trial. Tessa Nguyen, the young flight attendant, approached nervously, fatigue and confusion etched on her face. "Yes, ma'am. We're deplaning now." Maya looked at her directly, her tone calm, deliberate, and laced with authority. "Please inform your purser, Mr. Briggs, and senior attendant, Ms. Mallory, that I would like a word with them. Also ask Captain Cole and First Officer Park to join us. We can use the forward galley. Tell them not to disembark yet." Tessa blinked, frozen. I can't do that, ma'am. We have procedures." "I'm aware of the procedures," Maya interrupted, her voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "Now please go and deliver my message. Tell them passenger 12B insists." There was something in her tone, something that commanded compliance, not through anger, but through authority, earned from a lifetime of leadership. Tessa hesitated, then hurried toward the front. From her seat, Maya could hear the voices ahead. "What passenger 12B?" Paige scoffed. "The one with the attitude? Tell her to file a complaint online like everyone else." "She's insisting," Tessa murmured. "She wants the pilots, too." Owen let out a cynical laugh. "Unbelievable. Fine. I'll deal with this." Moments later, Owen Briggs appeared at row 12, his face tight, the professional smile wiped away. "Ma'am, the flight's over. Whatever your concern is, please take it up with customer relations once you exit." Maya looked up, her calm eyes freezing the air between them. "My concern," she said, enunciating every word, "is with you, your crew, and the operational integrity of this flight. I will not be discussing it with customer relations. I'll be discussing it with you, Miss Mallory, Captain Cole, and First Officer Park, now, in the galley." She paused, her tone dropping lower, colder. "Or would you prefer I conduct this conversation on the jet bridge, where your ground crew and the arriving passengers can hear?" Owen's smile vanished completely. He stood frozen for a few seconds before giving a rigid nod. "Fine," he said quietly, "but make it quick." Maya rose from her seat, straightening her sweater. The dried curry stain on her sleeve caught the light, a silent badge of insult and proof. She walked down the hushed cabin, her steps soundless. Ahead, Paige Mallory stood with her arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Let's get this over with," she muttered. Maya didn't respond. As she stepped into the galley, the air seemed to tighten, as though the cabin pressure had dropped. The captain, first officer, purser, and 2 attendants stood in a line. On one side, the flight crew of Stellara Air, and facing them, a single woman in a plain grey sweater and purple scarf, serene, composed, yet radiating an authority so tangible it felt like gravity itself. In that silence, each of them sensed it, though none yet understood. In mere seconds, the woman they had dismissed would make one phone call that could send the entire crew plummeting without ever leaving the ground. The galley was silent. The noise of passengers outside seemed sealed off by an invisible wall. Only Paige Mallory, Owen Briggs, Captain Martin Cole, First Officer Aidan Park, Tessa Nguyen, and the woman they thought was a difficult passenger remained. Maya Ellington. "All right," Owen began, his tone tight. "What's this about? You're holding up the deplaning process." Maya stood calmly in the narrow aisle, light catching on the purple scarf around her neck. She didn't raise her voice, didn't tremble, but spoke with a steadiness that made the air itself heavy. "It's about leadership, and the absence of it." Paige let out a sharp, dry laugh. "Oh, for heaven's sake, you've been to nothing but trouble this entire flight. You got your water, your meal, your seat. If you want a voucher, fine. I'll ask customer relations." "Enough." The word was soft as a breath, yet it landed like a command. The cabin froze. Maya reached into her handbag and took out her phone. No one knew what she was about to do. Some thought she would record them. Others assumed she was calling customer service. Instead, she swiped the screen and tapped a contact labeled R. Ortega, COO. The phone rang once before it was answered. "David, it's Maya," she said calmly. The entire crew went rigid. The way she said his name, without hesitation, without formality, spoke of authority, not request. "Flight SA-710, just landed. I need you to do a few things immediately." The voice on the other end said something, and Maya nodded slightly, her gaze fixed on those before her. "First, ground the entire cabin and cockpit crew of this flight, effective immediately. No one is to be rostered until I complete my review." The air seemed to freeze solid. Captain Cole frowned. "A grounding order? Who the hell do you think you are?" Paige scoffed. "She's insane. She's faking the call." But Maya continued, her tone even, unshaken. "Second," she said into the phone, "contact Heathrow ground operations. I need a secured conference room for 6 people. Include Mr. McKenna from UK operations and Ms. Holt from HR, Code Sierra." The moment she said the words Code Sierra, Owen Briggs went pale. He knew that code. It was used only for emergencies authorized by the owner's office. No one outside the board had the power to invoke it. Maya turned her gaze to Paige, her voice dropping into something colder. "Third, have airport security meet this crew at the jet bridge. Collect their IDs and access cards. They are not to communicate with anyone until I arrive." The voice on the other end responded. "Excellent. I'll see you in 15 minutes. She ended the call and placed the phone back into her bag. The silence that followed was absolute. "Was that supposed to scare us?" Paige asked, forcing a shaky laugh. "You can fake as many calls as you want, lady, but you have no authority here. This is our aircraft." Maya lifted her head, and the look in her eyes made the space seem to shrink around them. "Your aircraft," she said softly, her voice smooth but razor sharp. "No, Miss Mallory, that's where you're mistaken." She stepped forward, and the light fell across her calm, unflinching face. "Captain Cole," she said evenly, "my name is Dr. Maya Ellington. 3 years ago, I purchased this airline. I rebuilt it. I rebranded it. Every seat you stand beside, every uniform you wear, every paycheck you receive comes from me." The galley erupted in stunned silence. Owen stepped back, his face drained of color. Aidan Park's eyes went wide. Captain Cole opened his mouth, but no words came out. Paige stood frozen, her mocking smile cracking like a broken mask. Maya's voice cut through the air, low and powerful. "You insulted passengers. You disrespected elders. You threatened a mother with a baby. You turned compassion into a nuisance, and authority into a weapon. And you did it all under my banner." She turned to Owen, her tone steady, but ice. Cold. "As of 90 seconds ago, you and your entire crew are officially grounded. Pending termination." Tessa gasped, her hands trembling, tears welling in her eyes, not just from fear, but from a strange, overwhelming sense of justice. Captain Cole finally found his voice. This is impossible." You're her." Maya nodded once. "I am. And I will make sure Stellara Air never forgets what happens when dignity is left behind." Paige stumbled back against the galley wall, her voice breaking into a whisper. No, this isn't real." Maya turned away, her tone quiet, almost gentle. "It's as real as the curry stain on my sleeve." And as she walked out of the galley, not a single one of them said another word. Because they all understood their flight had ended, but their fall had only just begun. The crew corridor after deplaning was usually quiet, but that morning, every footstep echoed like the drumbeat of judgment. Paige Mallory led the line, her back straight, face tense, the click of her heels on the metal floor ringing sharp and cold. She tried to maintain the poise of someone still in control, but inside, the only thing left was fear. The very fear she had once inflicted on others, now returning, cold as air, from a decompression chamber. Behind her, Owen Briggs walked in silence, head bowed, his hands trembling slightly. Captain Martin Cole and First Officer Aidan Park followed at the rear, 2 men who had once commanded hundreds of lives, now stripped of authority, moving like the condemned. In the middle of the group was Tessa Nguyen, her eyes red, throat tight, heart pounding painfully with every step. They walked through the narrow airport corridors, escorted by 2 security officers. Every door they passed, every curious glance from ground staff, sliced through their pride like a blade. No one spoke. No one dared. Everyone knew what Code Sierra meant. It was invoked only in one situation, when the airline's owner intervened personally. The conference room waiting for them was deep within the restricted operations area. Grey walls, a long black glass table, and cold white lights that exposed every flicker of fear. 3 people were already there. Rafael Ortega, Stellara Air's COO, stood at the head of the table, his sharp features carved by decades of precision. Ingrid Holt, the Director of Human Resources, had eyes as sharp as razors. And Stuart McKenna, head of UK operations, known among pilots as the living black box for his unforgiving discipline. "Sit down," Raphael ordered curtly. The scrape of chairs filled the room. None of them could sit upright. Tessa hid her trembling hands under the table. Owen stared at his reflection in the black glass. A pale, hollow face that no longer resembled the man who once took pride in his work. Captain Cole sat rigid, trying to maintain his military composure, though sweat glistened at his temple. Paige no longer smiled. Her eyes were wide, darting, searching for a crack in the nightmare. The door opened. Maya Ellington entered. She wore no luxury suit, no security escort. Just a grey sweater and a violet scarf. Yet every head lowered the moment she walked in. She moved slowly to the head of the table and placed down a small black notebook, the same one that had been with her throughout the flight. The dried curry stain on her sleeve caught the light, a mark that had become impossible to erase. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice calm but filling the room. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Maya Ellington, owner and chairwoman of Stellara Air." No one breathed. Her tone needed no volume. Each word landed like the strike of a gavel. "8 hours ago," Maya continued, "I boarded flight SA-710 as a regular passenger. I experienced firsthand what has gone terribly wrong with this airline." She opened the notebook. Her handwriting was neat, precise, merciless. "Ms. Mallory." Paige flinched. Maya looked up, meeting her eyes. "Your behavior wasn't merely unprofessional. It was malicious. You made a racially charged remark during boarding, targeted me with sarcasm, and humiliated a passenger for asking for no ice. Later you mocked a mother with a crying infant and used your seniority as a weapon. Tell me, Ms. Mallory, do you believe authority exists to serve or to dominate?" Paige's mouth opened, then closed again. Her lips trembled. No words came. Maya turned to Owen. "Mr. Briggs, you watched it happen. You allowed it to happen. You lied about meal availability to favor another passenger, and when you spilled curry on me, you didn't apologize. You had the authority to lead your team, yet you chose convenience over conscience." Owen lowered his head. A bead of sweat dropped onto the table, spreading like the final punctuation mark on his career. Then she faced Captain Cole. "Captain, you kept your cockpit sealed, unaware of the toxicity in your cabin. Leadership isn't just altitude and airspeed, it's humanity. You commanded an aircraft, but not your crew." The words broke the man who had logged thousands of flight hours. He nodded, voice low and defeated. "You're right, ma'am." Maya's gaze shifted to the end of the table, to Tessa. "Ms. Nguyen, you were afraid, and I understand that. But fear explains, it does not excuse. When we turn away from cruelty, we become its accomplice." Her tone softened, though her eyes still shone with unwavering clarity. "I hope you learn that courage is doing what's right, even when your voice shakes." Tessa broke down, tears spilling onto her sleeve as she struggled to contain them. Maya closed her notebook, folding her hands over it. "My late husband and I built this airline on one principle: dignity in the skies. It's not a slogan, it's a promise you've broken." She glanced at Rafael Ortega, who gave a firm nod. Maya's next words were clear and final. Effective immediately, your employment with Stellara Air is terminated. All of you. No protests, no pleas. Only the suffocating silence of collapsing careers. When Maya rose and walked toward the door, no one dared look up. The door shut softly behind her, leaving behind the sound of heavy breathing and the cold metallic scent of regret. And in that moment, they understood they hadn't just lost their jobs, they had lost their dignity. The conference room door closed behind them, leaving 5 broken people in silence. No one dared to look at anyone else. There were no ranks now, no uniforms, only individuals who had just been stripped of everything. On the table, Ingrid Holt, the Director of Human Resources, slid a neat stack of white papers toward them. "Standard termination and non-disclosure agreements," she said, her voice dry and cold. "Sign them. Security will escort you to collect your belongings." There was no negotiation, no apology, no second chance. Paige Mallory stared at the paper in front of her, as if it were written in a language she no longer understood. Her fingers trembled violently. The pen slipped from her grasp, rolled across the glass table, and stopped at the edge of her chair. She had always believed she was untouchable. 20 years of experience, endless commendations in her record. Yet within hours, it had all vanished like vapor from a jet engine. When she stepped out of the room, the hallway stretched endlessly ahead, the white light casting a harsh glow on her hollow face. Employees whispered as she passed. They knew. Everyone knew. The words Flight SA 710 had spread across headquarters in a single morning. "That's the one Ellington fired personally," someone whispered. Paige heard, but didn't turn. She just walked on, every step sinking deeper into the floor. In her mind, only one sentence echoed. "Your aircraft? No, Miss Mallory. That's where you're mistaken." A month later, her name appeared on every airline blacklist. British Airways, declined. Virgin Atlantic, declined. Lufthansa. "Thank you for your interest." No one wanted to touch the woman associated with Code Sierra. 3 months later, her savings were gone. Paige applied to budget airlines, then to ground service companies. No one hired her. 6 months after her dismissal, she was working behind the handbag counter of an upscale department store. Each day, she stood under tired yellow lights, folding paper bags and forcing polite smiles at customers. One day, she caught her reflection in the glass display case and realized her face had taken on the same weary expression she once saw in the passengers she used to despise. But realization came too late, because by then, it wasn't redemption. It was punishment. Owen Briggs fared no better. After the internal review, his file bore a damning note. Leadership failure, willful negligence. No airline would touch a purser with that stain. Eventually, he found a job as a hotel manager in Manchester, teaching young staff how to smile at guests, the very skill he had once forgotten himself. And every time he saw a blue Stellara Air uniform pass through the lobby, his chest tightened, like a seatbelt pulled one notch too far. Captain Martin Cole, 30 years of experience, thousands of flight hours, was cited by the Civil Aviation Board for command oversight failure. To keep his license, he accepted cargo routes through the night. No passengers, no thank yous, no laughter of children. only the steady hum of engines and the darkness of the ocean below. Whenever the glow of the control panel reflected on the glass, he saw Maya Ellington's face staring back and heard her voice. "You commanded an aircraft, but not your crew." Only one among them, Tessa Nguyen, the youngest, the most fragile, chose a different path. A week later, in her small apartment, she sat down and wrote a 4-page handwritten letter to Stellara Air's headquarters. In it, she didn't defend herself. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She simply wrote, "I failed you, Dr. Ellington. I failed the values this uniform was supposed to stand for. I saw cruelty and said nothing. I was afraid of my boss. But now, I'm more afraid of the person I became." She sent the letter without expecting a reply. But 2 weeks later, her phone rang. The caller was Ingrid Holt. "Dr. Ellington read your letter," Ingrid said. "She believes remorse means nothing unless it's followed by change. She's offering you a 3-month probationary position in Stellara's London ground operations. Under one condition, you must complete our new leadership and ethics training program." Tessa broke down in tears, not because she was forgiven, but because she had been given a chance to make something right. And she did. 3 months later, she completed the program with the highest marks. At the review meeting, Maya looked at her and nodded. "Everyone deserves a second flight," she said softly. From that tragedy, Project Dignity was born. Maya hosted a global live stream addressing thousands of employees. "This wasn't a scandal," she said. "It was a diagnosis, and now we will heal." She erased every old training manual, replacing them with the empathy and resilience curriculum designed by behavioral psychologists. Every employee, from engineers to accountants, was required to participate in Secret Skies, an undercover program where staff flew anonymously as regular passengers and reported their experiences directly to the board. Maya closed her address with a single line that brought the entire audience to their feet in applause. "No passenger will ever be invisible again." And from the ashes of Flight SA-710, a new culture was born. Not merely a restructuring of staff, but the revival of an entire airline's soul. 9 months after the fateful day of Flight SA-710, sunlight streamed through the vast glass panels of London Heathrow Airport, glinting off the silver body of a Stellara Air A350 preparing to depart for Tokyo. Across the fuselage, freshly painted in bold silver letters, gleamed the new company slogan under the morning sun: "Dignity in the skies, always." In the stillness of the first-class suite, Dr. Maya Ellington sat before a thick report titled Post-Project Dignity Review. The numbers across the pages: customer satisfaction, internal feedback, quarterly revenue, all pointed upward. But what made her smile wasn't the graphs. It was the final note written by the head of training. Tessa Nguyen, completed empathy module with distinction, currently mentoring new cabin crew. She set the pen down just as the soft voice of a young flight attendant came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Stellara Air Flight SA-228 to Tokyo." The voice carried warmth, real warmth, the kind that had once vanished from these skies. Maya looked out the window. Sunlight spilled across the tarmac, stretching toward a pale blue horizon. Then came a gentle knock at her suite door. "Excuse me, Dr. Ellington," a young voice said softly. Maya turned. A young flight attendant stood there, her face still fresh, her confidence touched by humility. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she began. I wanted to say thank you." Maya tilted her head. "For what?" The young woman smiled, her eyes shining with genuine emotion. "For what you did for this company. I joined Stellara a year ago. Everyone told me it used to be different, cold, strict. But after the new training, everything changed. We heard about that transatlantic flight. We don't know all the details, but it made us proud to wear this uniform again." Maya's smile deepened, soft and sincere. "That's good to hear. Now we know," the attendant continued, "our job isn't just about serving drinks. It's about taking care of people. You made us remember that." She bowed politely and left, leaving Maya alone in the quiet cabin. Maya watched her stop mid-aisle, kneel gently beside an elderly passenger to help with his seatbelt, smiling with genuine kindness. Her gaze swept across the cabin. A male attendant was helping a mother with her child's luggage. The purser, once known for his stiffness, now crouched beside a passenger, speaking with respect in his eyes. There were no sighs, no fake smiles, only the warmth of human connection. The engines hummed softly as the aircraft began its climb. Maya rested her hand on the wooden table beside her, where a faint scratch still marked the surface, like the old yellow curry stain once etched into her sleeve. But now, she didn't see a blemish. She saw a reminder. At 35,000 feet, she thought of those who had fallen after that flight: Page, Owen, Captain Cole, and the others who had walked out of that room in silence. Not with resentment, but with understanding, because without them, Stellara would never have awakened. Today, dignity was no longer a marketing slogan. It lived and breathed in every smile of the crew. As the aircraft leveled out, sunlight poured across Maya's face. In her mind, she saw Harold Whitman, the elderly professor who had sat beside her on that flight. She remembered the thank you letter he'd sent months later, along with a silver embossed quote that read, "For showing decency when it was needed most, the skies are yours." And the infinity lifetime card he received, a symbol of what Maya had always believed, that kindness can travel farther than any flight path. Maya closed her eyes, letting the steady rhythm of the wind outside merge with her heartbeat. The anger was gone, replaced only by quiet conviction. People may forget passengers, they may forget flights, but no one should ever forget dignity. Outside the window, the sun rose fully above the clouds, bathing the wings in gold. A new dawn had arrived, not just for Stellara Air, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated, disrespected, or dismissed, yet chose to rise with grace. That flight changed everything, not just for a disgraced crew, but for an entire airline. Dr. Maya Ellington proved that true power doesn't come from a title, a uniform, or a seat number, but from integrity, respect, and courage. Because one quiet passenger in seat 12B reminded the world that dignity always deserves to fly. And so the journey of Dr. Maya Ellington came to an end, not with applause, nor with a loud victory, but with a quiet transformation that spread across the skies. From a flight once tainted by arrogance and prejudice, she turned it into a turning point for an entire airline. One where every smile, every thank you, and every small gesture carried a reminder. Dignity is never optional. This story is not just about aviation, or power, or status. It is about us, human beings who can choose to treat one another with respect, even when no one is watching. Because sometimes, true strength is not found in how high we fly, but in how we treat those who share the journey with us. If this story touched you, leave a like, share it to spread the message of kindness and dignity, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journeys, where the light of humanity continues to shine bright, even among the clouds.